if you're going to do it properly. So,
Yeah.
There's a kind of, rule of thumb that says for every sponsorship dollar that you spend, you need to spend another $2 to actually maximise the value out of it. So if it's $1,000 or $5,000 to sponsor the local sporting club, it's actually going to cost you $15,000 by the time you add in all the things that you should be doing in terms of time to build your relationship, to add promotions, to advertise.
Hi, I'm Jane Hilsden, marketing consultant and founder of Dragonfly Marketing and author of How to Do Marketing, a comprehensive guide for small businesses. Welcome to this episode of the How to Do Marketing Show. In this episode, we are chatting with Simon Graham, who sits on the Australian Marketing Institute New South Wales committee with me. We're going to be exploring the topic of community engagement. Simon has more than 20 years of experience in marketing, sales and community engagement, and he headed up the marketing department for the Dooley's group of clubs for 12 years. Simon's also worked as marketing manager of North Coast Cemeteries. One day, my curiosity as a marketer got the better of me, and I started asking him how on earth does he market for cemeteries and funerals. As it happens, just as it had in his role with the Dooley's Club, a good portion of his marketing success came down to community engagement. Again, I was just left with so many questions. So let's hear what he has to say. Simon, can you please provide your definition of community engagement? What is it, and how do you think this activity can be beneficial for small business?
Oh, for me, the definition of community engagement is doing something that genuinely adds value to the community that you or your business are part of. So there's a number of different components of that. And look, community engagement can mean different things to different people. In the council environment, when they talk about community engagement, in some cases they're talking about developer planning, or when a large development is going up, they need to go out and consult with the local community. When I think we're talking about community engagement, we're talking about doing things that are supporting the local community in terms of sponsorship, donation, fundraising, things that really add value. And what that is about is being able to, I think, build your brand and build a little bit of, public relations support. It's really doing something for the community, and in an environment where businesses will be supported by a community if the community sees the business providing support to that community. So to me, that's what community engagement is about. It's genuinely doing something that's it's just useful, and for the right reasons.
Yeah. And as you absolutely correctly said there, in terms of if a community, and whether that be a regional, local community, a business community, if they can actually see a demonstration that your business or your organisation is a part of that community in terms of they actually contribute to that community, they will be far more likely to actually contribute back to your business or your organisation, whether that be, providing you with loyalty or providing you with sales or providing you with, great word of mouth or whatever that is. So excellent. Thank you. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. There's a couple of different versions of community engagement, very common with property development, council, etc. But this interview, we're more referring to the community engagement that brands and businesses can have with their communities. Yeah.
Look, I think for me, it's almost like are you X person that is known for selling this product or this service, or are you this person who's known because you do this thing for the community?
Yes.
That's stuff that people remember that, that's the stuff that kind of is a bit of a point of difference.
Yeah.
And, that is the stuff that you also put at the front of your website, your social, the photos. That's the stuff people are genuinely interested in, far more so than, a promotion that says, come in on Friday because we're selling X at 50% discount or whatever.
Yeah.
If you've got a genuine story about something that's happening in the community, that's what you'll find there is a higher level of engagement and support and resonance.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. And in my experience, particularly in regional areas, what I see is a lot of businesses who are contributing to the community. And while it's incredibly generous, sometimes their contributions seem to be a little bit sporadic or random in the execution. Can you talk us through the strategic and planning consideration that organisations should work through before they start implementing any community engagement tactics? And please feel free. I mean, obviously you've worked for clubs as well as within the funeral industry. So please feel free to use examples there of how you've planned for your community engagement efforts.
Well, I mean, I think the 2 points you made, or you've mentioned two things that are really key, is actually have a plan. And have a strategy, and it doesn't have to be really complicated, and the plan should be a plan on a page. And that really, the strategy might be that in the next year we'll contribute $1,000 towards community engagement activity, or we will sponsor one significant event, or we will support one fundraising activity. And the plan really is just talking about what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're going to do it, when, who, and how much it's going to cost. It doesn't have to be particularly difficult, because then with a plan, you've actually got some criteria around what you want to support and why you want to do it. And there are so many things that you can do in terms of community engagement, with its volunteering, fundraising, event support, sponsorship. And regional communities and regional businesses do a huge amount to support their local communities, and that's really something that is incredibly important and incredibly valuable. I think one of the most important things to do is do some research. So, if you're actually wanting to get involved in community engagement, understand what are the opportunities or issues out there in the community that you can genuinely add value to, but also where you're going to get, if you like, a return on investment. And local councils will produce reports that tell you a lot of information about what issues are in the local community, but also your customers will tell you that as well. And if you want to be doing community engagement, it's got to be around things, or I recommend that it's around things that your customers are also interested in and that resonate, because that's the crossover at the end of the day. So, look, it's about, just having a bit of a plan and an idea of what it is that you want to do, because otherwise, you will respond to great initiatives that literally walk in the door, but there's no, it's just literally you respond to those initiatives as they come up. The big thing with community engagement, from my experience, is build a relationship, or it's about building those relationships over a longer term with specific organisations that you may want to partner with, because that's where you really get the value. It's not the one-off check writing exercise. It's actually, if you work with a local sports club or a charitable organisation, and you do that over a period of time, that really, really adds value, and that's where you can build support and also build your brand.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have got some cracking examples and of how you've successfully incorporated the community engagement into your overall marketing plan, because your role has been as overall marketing director. So community engagement is just one of the things that you do in order to achieve your objectives. So if we start off when you were working for the clubs, for Dooley's clubs, how did you plan and execute and measure your community engagements for the Dooley's clubs?
Look, when I started with Dooley's, community engagement was managed as a check writing exercise. And and that's a lot. In some cases within the club industry, there's a thing called club grants, which is a percentage of revenue gets allocated towards community expenditure. There's an opportunity with that to actually build on that. And for me, the starting point was to really look at, within my key marketing strategies, actually putting community engagement as a key strategy. And the reason for that was, there's an expectation that as a community club, we are contributing and genuinely adding value to the community. And we needed to be able to demonstrate that. So it really did come down to building a bit of a plan. We did, the check writing thing used to be random every year. We would just write different checks out to different people. And what I wanted to do was build up some relationships with key partners. So you actually develop community partners as part of your plan and work with organisations over a period of time to understand what it is that they need, but also work with them to genuinely help what they are doing. And originally then when they started, that was just me doing that as part of my role. And then I brought on or was supported by a community engagement coordinator because it started to build, and we ended up with a program that was, we had nearly 150 organisations that we were supporting in the local community with a budget north of $3 million. Wow. And the success of it was just built around the success of the business. As the business got bigger, we were able to contribute more to the community. But we had some amazing relationships that were really, really genuinely valuable in terms of support of Netball New South Wales, with where we were a sponsor for the State League. And sporting sponsorships are enormously valuable if you find ones that are relevant and meaningful to your community, and enormously appreciated, and you get a lot of value. We partnered with the Children's Hospital at Westmead and focused specifically on oncology, cancer. And then we provided funding and support for research. But we also had people who were working in the club who are our customers who used to make things to sell at the hospital shop. So, the way in which we did it was we looked at a holistic approach around what can we do that will help you, but also how can we involve our customers in the process. And people found that really important. And I guess at the end of the day, what you're looking for is people who will become ambassadors for your business because they know what you do, they know why you do it, they know you care about the community, and they're prepared to go out there and talk on your behalf about the great stuff that you do. And that's the best advertising that you can possibly get.
100%. So tell me, with this so to explain because it sounds like they are fantastic examples. So with the nitty gritty, so say for example, you said you were supporting Netball New South Wales and you sponsored one of their state competitions. So what do they get out of a sponsorship like that? Like how do you, obviously it's money. What else do they get out of that? And then what do you get out of that? Like what's the I guess the tactical implementation of that look like?
Look, I think there's a number of things that if you are going to become involved in some form of community engagement, you also need to have some kind of agreement or contract, if you like, with your community partner that literally does spell out what you do and what they do and what your expectations are and how you're going to measure that. For me, it was about we contributed a certain amount of money in return for which we got certain acknowledgement. We were acknowledged as a sponsor at a certain level. We got acknowledgement on their website, through their social. We had signage opportunities at the netball centre. We had the opportunity to participate as a presenter, to attend dinners, we also had the opportunity to run competitions specifically for their members. So there are things that you can do in the partnership because these organisations have their own membership base. So it's almost like you have an opportunity to access their membership base with an offer for your business. Yeah. If you do that in the right way and give them something meaningful, not just the usual, but make it something a bit special. And that way, you actually get a response and a return on investment that is really valuable. If they're hosting a dinner or a event or a presentation, the other thing to do is actually turn up. Be there, stand up and say, I'm really happy to be a sponsor. this organisation, this club, this sporting group does amazing things for the community, and I'm going to be continuing to sponsor and support what they do. That personal contribution is enormously valuable, and it's enormously supported as well. The other thing to link to it is just the photo opportunities, where if you support through the council, Clean Up Australia Day or an initiative, make sure someone's taking a photo. iPhones have got great cameras on them.
Yeah.
Make sure someone gets a photo. Go and get some T-shirts printed with your logo on it. Make sure everybody is wearing a T-shirt with your logo on it.
Love it. Yeah.
Grab a photo, put that on your social. Even better, send that to the local newspaper. Make sure it's a really great photo, lots of colour, but the right balance. But send that to the local newspaper with a little bit of a story in it. And that stuff is quite likely to get picked up because, they love that. Yeah. And that's where you get a really good return on investment, if you like, from involving yourself in community engagement.
Yeah, I love it. Some great examples there. And I think you're absolutely right. If you're going to do this, it is a marketing initiative, but make it an operational priority as well. And as you said, make sure somebody within the executive team, or with, the small business owner who might be sponsoring this, make sure that they turn up at the event, because that way, you've got a room full of people who can put a face to the logo that's been, on the basketball courts or on the netball courts all season. There's a face behind that. And as you said, it's about building relationships, and people are obviously much more inclined to connect with people. So get your people behind those sponsorships. And as you said, great example, get the photos of people in your T-shirts and people actually partaking in those sponsorship initiatives, because then it becomes more than just a logo, on a T-shirt or on the side of a netball court. It actually becomes, the people within that organisation connecting with people that will ultimately be your customers. Great tips there. Now, this one I love. I remember nearly falling off my chair when you were telling me about this community engagement example. So you moved from the Dooley's group of clubs into working for a funeral organisation. And you told me the story about something called the Death Cafe.
Yeah.
Can you run us through this example of community engagement?
I moved across to work for a while for a trust that managed a group of cemeteries, crematoria, and one of the big changes that was happening within that industry was the need for community engagement. And really what that was about was, people are at a time of death and dying. It's a really, really difficult time in people's lives, and most of us aren't prepared for it. And most of us generally don't deal with death and dying well. And so there was an opportunity to build a community engagement program to support the people who are in need at a time of loss. And one of the things that I came across when I was looking at the research, again, research being a key thing to do when you're putting together your community engagement plan, was this idea of a death cafe. Death cafe is an international movement, and what it is literally a space where people get together, they have tea, coffee, cake, and they talk about death. And when I first mentioned this, the response I got was like, what are you talking about? You can't
Probably the same as my response was.
Your response, yeah, everybody. But what it is, it's actually an environment where people can comfortably get together and talk about what's happened to them or what might be going to happen to them, the fact they may have lost someone, and they just want to be able to talk about it in an environment where everyone is comfortable to talk about death. And we ran these as part of our our community engagement program, and we did a whole number of different seminars, education programs. We did community days. We did a whole lot of different things. We even ran Tai Chi at one stage in one of our outdoor pavilions. But the whole idea with the Death Cafe was it just meant that people could come together and feel that they were going to be able to be supported, because they could actually talk about what was going on in their lives and not have someone, going, oh, they're there, it's okay, because it's not okay. But it's just, we had. I remember one of our guests was a woman who was she was coming to the end of her. She was ill, an older woman, and she was had 3 adult children, and she wanted to talk about what was happening, the fact that she was coming up to dying, and none of her kids wanted to talk about it. Yeah. They just said, no, we can't talk about this. So she wanted some actual help to be able to say, how do I start to talk about this stuff with my kids, because it's important. I want them to, to know what I'm going through, what I'd like to have happen. And be able to have a comfortable, at least a conversation about it. So that was the whole idea behind the Death Cafe.
Yeah.
The idea is, don't be afraid if you're thinking about doing community engagement to think outside the box as far as, think of something. It's okay to think about different ideas of things that you can do that other people aren't necessarily doing. It's okay to actually look at a whole range of options before you choose the ones or ones that are going to work best for you.
Yeah. And so in terms of this, so if you kind of started that initiative around the Death Cafe, is that, like, how did you promote that? Did you go out, like, what does I can't even begin to think about how you acquire new customers for a funeral parlour. So how did you promote this specific community engagement activity? Was it to new people? Was it to existing kind of inquiries? Like, how did that work?
Well, look, as in an business, you have a database. It's really important that you build in this day and age, your social is incredibly important. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube.
Instagram? What did you do on Insta? Like, how do you promote the Death Cafe on Instagram? Talk us through a couple of those examples.
What we were doing was we take, because, the cemeteries are actually beautiful, large public parks, to be honest, as well as being places of memorialisation. So you have incredible flora and fauna, and we had avenues of jacarandas, we had different wildlife, and so we would take photos at different times of the year and actually put that on our Instagram. And also around key events, Anzac Day, Easter, Mother's Day, there would be Father's Day. There's all these times when you can actually include, and also when other people are there and taking photos, they tag the site, or they tag that they're attending or visiting the cemetery. So those are things that you just look at, those different ways in which you can link through. But with the Death Cafe, we were working with community. Again, the idea is work with a community partner. So we partnered with an organisation that was actually involved in running support services for people who are experiencing grief and loss. And they, if you like, brought their own database with them. So, and they promoted it. So to be honest, it wasn't necessarily us. We actually, if you like, provided a venue.
Yes.
We provided the support and promotional support for it. But because again, it's looking at smart ways you can partner with organisations who have their own ability to create or manage these events. You don't necessarily have to start from scratch.
Yeah. That's brilliant. That's such great out of the box thinking. And I can imagine in your role in marketing there, it would have just been full of out of the box thinking in terms of how you get the message of death, because as you said, it's just not something that people are necessarily comfortable talking about. And I think in that respect, the fact that you showed up for your community and provided them with something that they clearly needed, and it was outside of the scope of their family and their friends who just either couldn't or wouldn't or whatever talk about that with them. The fact that you offered that platform is brilliant. So what kind of uptake and engagement and I guess measurement parameters did you put? How did you work out whether this was actually something that was adding value to your business.
Look, my thinking around community engagement is it's a longer term investment. Yeah. Because you are building relationships over time. It's not a case of I spent X amount of dollars to run this particular event and I expect to get sales of Y as a result.
Yeah.
It's not, I wouldn't have that view.
No.
But the things you can do are, if people are attending an event, a death cafe, an open day, an education seminar, you take the opportunity to build a database, collect their email addresses and their phone numbers, and just say on the basis that if we were running something else like this, would you be interested in attending? Yeah. What you've done is just provided an opportunity to actually create some lead generation.
Yep.
It's not as blatant as that, but at the end of the day, you're looking for opportunities to engage with customers or potential customers, and there's no problem with doing that. The other thing you're looking for is amplification through your either media. So if you get articles in the local newspaper, bear in mind the multiplier effect. An article in the newspaper is worth 3 times the same space in advertising.
Yeah.
So, that is incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
If you can do that. Also, if you publicise these events on your social, your website, your Facebook page, then this is something you can measure in terms of likes, shares, comments, and click-throughs to your website. So there's a number of metrics that you can put around your community engagement that really talks about the number of people who will see your brand.
Yes. Yeah. Brilliant. That's excellent. Wow. That's such a great example of community engagement that I think has the potential to provide a really rich form of engagement. Like that goes beyond the kind of sponsorship of the local netball team, really, doesn't it? Like that's a really emotive kind of connection that people stand to have with your business. Excellent. So are there any tips? Because again, and you touched on it before in terms of actually getting people to see for this sponsorship to be visible. You spoke about getting people to wear your T-shirts when they're down doing Clean Up Australia, or turning up at the various sponsorship events, putting your logo on the sporting ground, etc. Because again, this is something where a lot of businesses, they might be pouring out these sponsorship dollars, but no one's seeing it. In terms of how businesses kind of get that visible, but also, if there's any additional tips around, how they can and measure that effort or plan that effort more successfully. Have you got your kind of top tips for what businesses should do to really make sure that their community engagement hums?
Look, for me, I think the idea is, rather than try and do 10 things, do 3 things really well.
Yes.
So, bring it down, because community engagement, there are so many things you can do in your local community. There's a vast range of things, and it's really hard in some cases to say no, because they're all good causes. They're all great.
Yeah.
The issue is you need to have some criteria and be able to say, these are the 2, 3, 5 things that we will do. The other thing is, if you're going to do it properly. So, there's a kind of, rule of thumb that says for every sponsorship dollar that you spend, you need to spend another $2 to actually maximise the value out of it. So if it's $1,000 or $5,000 to sponsor the local sporting club, it's actually going to cost you $15,000 by the time you add in all the things that you should be doing in terms of time to build your relationship, to add promotions, to advertise, because it's not just enough to write out the check. You've actually got to be telling people and advertising it. So there's an investment over and above what the initial cost is, and that's something you just need to build into your thinking as far as what the time is and what the investment will be. But if you're realistic about that, then you really will get, the return on investment. but it's also, build the relationships with the key people who will support you because, they're aligned to what it is that you're trying to achieve. So it's about a value proposition and working with people who share the same values.
Oh, love it. They are cracking tips. Thank you so much for that. Like that tip about assume that you're going to need to spend at least 2 or 3 times the original amount of the sponsorship is a cracker. And I think that's something that a lot of businesses could take away in terms of understanding how to really make that sponsorship worthwhile and, more importantly, visible, so that, if you're going to get the benefits out of sponsoring an organisation, make sure people know about it, so that yes, you're delivering value to that sponsored organisation, to your community. But with marketing, we also need to make sure that we're delivering value for the organisation itself. So brilliant. I love it so much. Good insight, so many good tips. Now, Simon, if people want to connect with you because they've loved hearing what you have to say, where can they find you?
I am on LinkedIn, Simon B. Graham, and I can also provide some contact details through you, I guess, as far as being able to
put those in the show notes. Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. So that's Simon B. Graham, and that's Graham on LinkedIn. And look, I just can't thank you enough for such a wonderful bit of insight into the world of community engagement with some fantastic examples. Thank you, Simon.
That's all right. You're very welcome.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of How to Do Marketing featuring Simon Graham, sharing all of his insight into building effective community engagement. I love Simon's tip around including a budget that accounts for an additional $2 for every $1 invested into sponsorship, just to make sure that you can really leverage the sponsorship from a branding and a visibility point of view. If you are engaged with a community that you think might really enjoy this episode, share a screenshot of this episode with them and have them subscribe. You can also join myself and the crew at Dragonfly Marketing at any of our social channels. On Instagram, we're at @dragonfly_marketing, or Facebook, we're at facebook.com/Dragonfly Marketing. And if you are on LinkedIn, I'd love to connect. Simply search for me, Jane Hilsden. Until next time, happy marketing.
You've been listening to another Morgan Media production.